My name is Joaquim Kitolele, and thank you for tuning in to listen to this seminar on octopus in the Southwest Pacific. It is good to see that there is interest in the responsible stewardship of our marine treasures. Epeli, who is our key speaker and the lead author of our paper, will be discussing our work. We also like to acknowledge our co-authors, Dr. Monal, Kelly, Rusila, Max, and Paul. So this webinar will be around 30 to 40 minutes long. We are working at the Institute of Marine Resources, which is dedicated to the sustainable management and development of the marine and coastal resources in the Pacific. Our work is supported by the Pacific Marine Partnership, or PUM, and funded by the European Union and the government of Sweden, and aims at building sustainable fisheries in the Pacific region. And our main objective is to build capacity through research, education, training, and development for key stakeholders in fisheries and marine resource management. When we first started, we consulted the Ministry of Fisheries on which species needed to be researched. So octopus was in their radar for them. So we did not just pick the topic from the south, so it was a priority from the government side. So without further explanation, let me give you some facts you might not know about octopus, which is very interesting marine animal. It has more than one brain. It is clever. They can use tools, use cunning disguises or camouflage and escape techniques. And they have blue heart and three hearts. Okay, so across the Pacific, we have stories and folklore linked to our marine animals, such as whales, sharks, and turtles. So what about octopus? What about this blue blooded treasure organism with three hearts? Here in the Pacific, we have very few researchers, and there's a few of us studying marine treasures in the Pacific Ocean, which is the largest and deepest ocean. And do you know that around 80% of the ocean remain unexplored? And our marine resources is a treasure. And also it's very interesting, and we need to conduct more research on them since they have great stories to tell. If we think about stories on octopus from a global level, I'm not sure if you remember the story of Paul the octopus. This was a common octopus who predicted the results of international association football matches. And he came, it was accurate prediction in 2010 FIFA World Cup. So this brought him a worldwide attention as an animal oracle. So his predictions were 100% for the 2010 FIFA World Cup. And if you look into the Pacific, we have untold stories, myths. A village close to my birthplace here in Fiji, which is also one of our research sites, has an interesting story about octopus. So the octopus, they crawl to the land area and climb up the pandanus tree, or Vunivandra, and feed on the pandanus fruit. So these pandanus fruit are sometimes called the tourist pineapple. So we have here a tourist from the sea coming to the land area to eat this ripe fruit. So it's very interesting. Also during that research, a key informer also mentioned, so during one of our fishing trip, that our octopus crawl up on top of the rock. And it was amazing because it was just gazing around, just like a human sitting on a rock, looking at the horizon and thinking about life. It was thinking that I won't be a rock star, I will be a legend. So, and then we look into Solomon Islands. In the Solomon Islands, in the artificial island of Malaita. So it is the totem of the people. And Foida is located in this artificial island. And they believe that octopus was the favorite food of their ancestors. They who were brave warriors and get victory over their enemies. And also, it was believed when their ancestors died, they turn into octopus. So octopus have a special protection on this void reef. And because of this, ancient beliefs, the people will not eat octopus because of these restrictions. So there is an abundance of octopus on the reef around these artificial islands of void. So my last story, before I pass it on to Epeli, is from Epeli's island. Epeli is from Kandavu. So this story is from Folk Tales of the South Pacific. So this was about two tough gods of the reef. So in Epeli's island lives a god, octopus. His name was Roko Bakanidewa, and he was the guardian at the Nadeva Passage on the south coast of Kandavu. So in all the channels through the corals of Fiji in the olden times, gods used to guard the land. And Dakwanga, he was the great shark god, and he was one that was very powerful god. So his power over the minds of the people in Fiji was very great, for they really respected and feared him. So the great shark always boasted, "I'm the great Dakwanga. I have never beaten in combat. And I have conquered the sea, eel from Rewa, and I have defeated Masela the god from one island called Yanu the Channel." So the great Dakwanga swam to the passage channel and went to Kandavu. So when he went down to the coast and before he entered the channel, he gave a warning: "Make way at the passage. I am coming." The great shark Dakwanga. And the octopus replied, "No, I am the barrier past. It is no one may go without my permission." So Dakwanga shouted, "Very well, we'll fight." So they fought for a while. And then the great octopus, Maseleva, he captured Dakwanga using the 8 tentacles. So Dakwanga was captured. So he said, "Free me, and we too shall make a pact." So Dakwanga replied, "It is well known that I, the shark, am the terror of all shipwrecked people. Free me from your tentacles, and I vow that your people of this district of Nadeva and Kandavu will need never fear me." So it came to pass. So to this day, it is said that the Nadeva people from Kandavu are never attacked by sharks when they are shipwrecked. And then the great shark god, the ruler of all shark, protects them. And the bond of friendship still exists between the people of Nadeva and the people of Taviun, the land of Taekwondo famous. And there is still an imprint of the octopus that you can find on the rock. So that was the past. In this generation and time, Epeli from Kandavu has studied at USP in Europe. His study focused on marine science, and he's continuing to tell his stories through his research, and one of that is studying about octopus. And over to you, Epeli. Thank you.
Naka, good morning and a very warm welcome to everyone. Wherever you're tuning in, thank you, Joe, for that wonderful introduction. Just bear with me as I share my screen. So, as Joe have mentioned, and once again, thank you, Joe, for the wonderful introduction. And just before I move on, I would like to take this time to also acknowledge my co-authors that some of them I believe are tuned in. So wherever you joined in, if you're having an extended tea break in the morning, greetings from this wonderful office at the Institute of Marine Resources. So today it's a Talanoa session, and what I hope that I can do is foster some discussions around this particular group of commodities or this particular group of amazing organisms after this presentation. And the story of Rokombakanideva, where I'm from, is one till this day that still shocks us. And I recall at one point during my studies here at here at the University of the South Pacific, while I was doing my postgraduate diploma, one of our renowned scholars, Professor Choweli, stepped into the room, and before starting his lecture, he mentioned, "Hey, do you guys know the myth of Rokombakanideva?" He asked us who of us are from Kandawu, so I put my hands up and he said, "Yeah, I'm from Kandawu." And he said, "Do you believe the story?" I looked at him with a bit of doubt, obviously, as that wearing that science sort of lens. And I told him, "I'm not sure. I've heard the myth, but yeah, to this day I'm not sure." So he showed us a video from I believe it was from Japan, that had these scientists. They were trying to test the amazing ability of octopus to adapt and their camouflage behavior and the way they could fend for themselves while in the wild. And so they took this octopus, they put it in a tank, a massive tank that was infested with sharks, gray reef sharks and white tip sharks, and see whether it could defend themselves using its amazing ability to camouflage to backgrounds within the aquarium tank. Surprisingly, after 2 days, they couldn't find it, so they thought it must have been shared by the group of sharks. After, I think it was after 2 weeks, they started seeing shark's carcass starting to float up into in the aquarium, and they were wondering if there was a contamination or maybe there was something wrong with the system. To their surprise, when they put the camera within the aquarium, what they saw really shocked them was that at night, at one particular night, there was a shark coming, just gazing on the bottom of the aquarium, and what shocked them was that this octopus, who was really just blended with its background engulfed the shark and sort of prevented it from swimming, because for those of us who know sharks, it has to continue swimming in order to breathe. So that's when they find out the cognitive behavior of this animal, the ability to learn while in the wild, adapt, and also survive. In front of you, a few pictures, and just a bit of background is that one of the things that really drove us, or me particularly personally, as a young graduate back in 3 years, 4 years ago, I wanted to learn more about cephalopods in general, particularly the octopus group. But the challenge was we never had as an expert here in Fiji, in the region back then. So when I came back from studies, I sat with the team and I said we have this opportunity to do some research, sat with the ministry, and they did agree it was something that we need to look into. And with that, we wanted to look at how these populations of octopus connected, but we were blocked with a few big questions, and questions like, okay, what species do we have here in Fiji even to start with? So that was the reason we came up with a framework of the paper that I will share with you. I will share with you today. Just back on this slide before I move on. This, if you look at your screen right in front of you, these different organisms, these different species of octopus, if you see them in the wild, it's really hard to identify them. And I will talk a bit of that later on. And this was part of the research the review that we had to do, identifying what are the species that we have in order to characterize them for octopus fisheries, so to use it as a basis for fisheries management, and also identify taxons that we have here in Fiji, and see which ones have deep cultural ties to our societies and to our communities in Fiji. As global fisheries expand, there's a shift from finfish fisheries now to invertebrates. There's a lot of focus around invertebrate fisheries as well, and octopus for sure is one of the main commodities in not only in the Oceania region, but in other regions of the world. And sadly, there's a big and a massive body of research that needs to be done around the biology of the animal, the morphological plasticity, the taxonomy that I've mentioned a bit, and the habitats. Some of these organisms, they thrive in habitats which is just inaccessible. It's a bit hard to access them in those habitats and study them quite well for stock assessment. So those were the challenges that we were able to identify through our review process. But nevertheless, it's a lucrative commodity within the domestic market. And that's one of the reasons why we thought, hey, we need to have the profile for these particular organisms improve in terms of consolidating all the informations that we have on these organisms before, maybe 5 or 6 years from now, when there's a shift in commercializing the commodity, at least we have some information, some basis information on the group. So that led to, with that in mind, and we sat down and we said, okay, we need to plan this well, because for those of us who are sort of familiar with the biodiversity hotspot Fiji and Solomon Islands and the map in front of you, we sort of fall within that Western space where the biodiversity hotspot is, we're quite well known for. So this was some of the things we need to discuss in order to identify the framework of our review. And what we wanted to look at was, okay, what is the taxonomy? What's the current status of the taxonomy, as in what are the species that are present? What is the information around exploitation and fisheries? And is there any management or sort of conservation strategies out there for this group of animals? That led us to identify and just confirm 7 countries that sort of share the basis 3 criteria that we came up with, and that was the level of dependence on the fishery, data availability, and the third criteria, data availability, level of dependence, and the third criteria being the cultural significance, seeing it how it ties well to coastal communities, and some of the stories that Joe has already shared led us to choose that third criteria. So with that criteria, we selected those 7 countries, and we basically did our conducted research to answer the pointers in front of you. What is the taxonomy? What taxon is in these 7 countries? What is the exploitation level management? This will sort of give us information that the species that are available within these countries are most likely also present here in Fiji. So what we found was, in terms of taxonomy, like I mentioned, there's a lot of ambiguity around the species level. Because in the past, there's scientists are more with using the conventional method of using morphology. They group species into their genus and family and orders. One of the things we've started to find out through the publications that we investigated, that this particular group of animals are known for cryptic speciation. And this is some of the challenges that taxonomists face when identifying species of octopus nowadays. And the divisions at the higher order was quite established, and that is, whether they're Shirata or Shirata animals. But as it comes down to the genus, that's where research is needed at that particular level, because like I've mentioned, morphological ambiguity, using morphology to identify them is not enough. So nowadays they are using morphology and also molecular tools to confirm the species that we have here locally. So from that, what we found was there are 23 species recorded from this that belongs to 11 genera or 11 genus in these 7 countries, and they are listed in front of you. Apologies, I couldn't put all the English names because I would run out of space on my screen. But this is the species name. Just a note that from somewhere you'll note that there's only one record, but that does not mean that that's the only species that's present in that particular country. What we in the region lack is research, and I'm sure there's a lot more species that's present in Samoa and along with that all these other 7 countries, but we just need to focus the research in this particular group in order to identify and find out what other species that are present. Quite an extensive list of species, and these are species that were gained through looking at published peer-reviewed journals, FAO guides, and also some global data aggregators like GBIF, but obviously with certain criteria where you can actually say that this is a confirmed record or not. So just seeing the screen in front of you, most of these species are not important to fisheries. There's only a few that is important from preliminary assessments. And it's exciting to see this number of species that are present in the region, but quite sad that we haven't really dived deeply enough into the ecology and what we can do in terms of fisheries and fisheries management. It's a women in terms of exploitation. It's octopus is a women-dominated fishery. Preliminary surveys that we conducted around Fiti level and Wono level, we found out that the women contribute a lot in this particular fishery, from extraction to post-harvest processing and even to marketing. Whereas for men fishers, they when they go out, they are solely focusing on finfish, and octopus are usually a second option. If they have a good catch for that day, octopus are not really caught. But if they're having a bad catch, this is for men fishers in particular, then if they encounter octopus, that they would include them in their catch as well. But for women, season in, season out, this is one of their main commodities. Capture volumes, what we found is that it's been steadily increasing, and there's a lot of numbers that we've shared in the paper. But what I should just say at this point is that when we looked at the adjusted inflation value from last year, that's when we submitted the review. It was quite surprising in terms of production from these countries, and this is looking at published reports within ministries and in these various countries. Just tying it back to what I had mentioned, that if there's good information available, then because production on the particular group is increasing quite steadily, then it's crucial that we sort of answer the really important questions in order to for like stock assessments, questions around stock assessments and species identity, in order to make informed decisions when it comes to management aspect. In front of you, one of the studies that we're doing now, as a root of from this particular review, is that, okay, we need to identify the species that we have. So it's what we are beginning, what we are seeing, sorry, is that we are quite confident that we're just using morphological or body parts, because octopus have permanent body parts. As shocking as that may be, they are a master class in terms of mimicry and camouflage. But when there's a carcass in front of you, when maybe if you're marching around the market, and if there's a carcass in front of you, you will notice that there are body marks on the animal itself that is permanent. And this is the things that we are using to do preliminary assessments on what species is important to fisheries here in Fiji and also in the 7 countries. And from Fiji, what I can say is that it looks like it's the day octopus or blue octopus. The scientific name is Octopus cynia. In red is another species that we have heard from fishers that they also do sell it in the market, but it's one that is rarely it's rarely caught, not as common as the day octopus. So I haven't seen one. Sorry, I've seen one myself, but the unfortunate thing is that I just didn't have my camera at that point to take pictures, and the differences were quite apparent. But for this particular, for the day octopus, these are some of the things that we look at when we use body parts to identify them. With the scheme of the animal in front of you, you will see that we look at the suckers, if they are single lane suckers or double lane suckers within one tentacle, even um, even the tentacle lengths, whether the tentacles on the sides or the 4 tentacles are longer. On the tentacles, there are these stripes, bands, zebra bands that we also use. And for a more detail, we look into their mantle, which is the head region that contains most of its organs, and obviously also the reproductive genitals for both male and females that we use to identify them, um, and group them into their species group. So we are using morphology or body parts markings. We can see here, at least in Fiji, we are beginning to see that day octopus is the common one that's important to fisheries in Fiji. As Joe was just mentioning a couple of minutes ago, there's really deep ties of the animal to our culture. Lefi'i, the god Lefi'i in the district of Samoa. I haven't heard a detailed account of that story. I'm really interested to hear a detailed account of that story. Rokumbak Nideva, you've heard from Joe, the Kandavu pest god in Nadeva. His encounter with the shark god. That is as a myth that's still being told until this day. For the island, it will be interesting to see, because of the belief of the wonderful one talks from Solomon, particularly for the island, the abundance of octopus, because they believe when people die, they turn into octopus in the spirit and they transcend into the spirit world. So it will be also interesting to see, as a research perspective, what is the ecological impacts of this. But to a village here in Fiji, it's a totem. There's another study that's coming up by a colleague of mine, Dr. Rusila, who will go into the details of why is it a totem in that particular village. And as the picture in front of you, the myth of the rat and the octopus, the bottom line is to treat everyone with respect. And until this day, the legend is that the octopus is still angry with that rat. So fishers, in that belief, use these lures which mimics the rat, and that sort of attracts the octopus when they're out fishing. In terms of management, there's really nothing in the region, within the Pacific, within the 7 focus countries. The IUCN in red lists only 3 species that are deficient, 4 species of less concern. Regional instruments provide more of an overarching framework or pathway to maybe, if communities on national level decide, then they can use regional instruments as sort of a guiding and a framework to develop that. One of the things that I will dwell in front of you is a picture of a scheme of community-based fisheries management. This is something that is really working in terms of managing the stock or populations of octopus. And this is from an accounts of different studies that have been done in these 7 countries, what they did find is an increase of abundance of this group of amazing marine organisms when there's periodically harvested MPAs or permanent closures. And one particular one here in Fiji is in Nabakabu MP, LMMA, and through Themen's research, Barabi Themen, that is, he was able to find out from ecological field studies and also from community perception that those 2 octopus that I had alluded to earlier, the day octopus and ornate octopus, they, before the establishment, which is around, if I'm not mistaken, 40 years ago, before the establishment of the LMA, there were hardly any octopus seen around. But after 10 years of establishment, they begin to see both the day octopus and ornate octopus, which just goes to show the effectiveness of these tools in replenishing populations of these marine organisms. The next steps is, like I've mentioned, now is, okay, the review provides the basis for further research for whoever wants. That is the hope, actually, that the review provides this framework for students or for any researcher in that regard who wants to move forward or carry on the work on octopus in the region, in the 7 countries, or even in the Oceania region as a whole. Use the review as a framework for guiding them in asking the questions that they need to ask and answer through research. For us here in Fiji, what we recognize that, okay, we need a taxonomy, sort of a phylogenetic study to actually confirm the species. This is because of the morphological ambiguity that I've alluded to. And so that'll involve a bit of molecular analysis and body parts or morphological analysis to be done together in order to confirm the species that we have, and it's important to fisheries here. But alongside that, to conduct also what we call fishery dependent and fishery independent surveys, field surveys, and market and lending surveys, so we can have a sort of holistic stock assessment on octopus themselves, and continue to advocate for what's working, and that is at the moment community-based fisheries management, or in some countries they know it as locally managed marine areas. In Tonga, special marine areas. Continue to create awareness and capacity build communities around these tools, which has been effective and been passed on from generations to generations, and through studies they have been reported that are effective in maintaining and replenishing populations of these amazing marine organisms. Just a few acknowledgements, and if you have any questions, I believe that's about it from my end. And if you have questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And if I know also some of my co-authors are also joined in, and if I may not be able to answer them, they are also here to help me out. I have a question here from Mr. Andrew Perez. Just if you can just give me 1 second, let me just read his question before I explain it this morning. Thank you, Andrew, for that question. So just to read it out, so for every one of us, what Andrew is asking is that, in my opinion and organization, of the paucity of data of stock assessments, how are the stocks, and is the little data we do have indicating the need for management interventions such as temporal closures of the fishery? Mr. Paris, for that question, that was one of the reasons why you had to sit in with the ministry on the get-go. Like Joe mentioned, it was in their radar. And we also acknowledge the massive experience of the ministry in that regard. But what they did also confirm is that they've seen a sort of decrease in sizes of this particular group of organisms in the market. This is also something that our fisher persons have confirmed with us, that in terms of the numbers, there are not so much numbers as you compare it to 5 to 10 years ago, and even the sizes are also decreasing. In Wotua, after we met up with the village elders, and we had held some discussions, because this is one of the main commodity in Wotua. What they did also confirm that it's surprising that the sizes of the octopus that they're catching now is quite small compared to 5 to 10 years ago. This could be a result, obviously, of fishing pressure, but it also, because within that season, it also may be an indication, or maybe they're just catching also the smaller sizes. But after good discussion with the elders, they said it's been, I believe, 2 years now, that 2 to 3 years that the sizes have been consistently small. So, from a precautionary precautionary approach perspective, this is something that I know there's a large body of work at the moment around that's going on at the moment. Sorry, on marine surveys that's being conducted by with the Department of Environment in collaboration with WADE. And if these perceptions are coming out from fishers and also our managers, then obviously we need to work together in the sense, on top of the community base, maybe develop some stringent policies around octopus management. Another question. Yes, there'll be a recording of the webinar. This was a question by an attendee, and I'm certain that my colleagues will circulate it around. There's a question from an attendee on the if the representation of women is the equal representation of women in community-based fisheries management decision. This is a really good question, and I can say that if I'm allowed to only speak based on the experiences that I have in Fiji, if this question was raised to me maybe 5 to 10 years ago, I would say no. But with the great amount of work that's been done, not only by research or academic institutions, but government and NGOs around this space, where women are more involved and they can contribute more to the discussion around community-based management tools like temporary, periodically harvested closures and permanent closures. I think now that women are beginning to be involved in these discussions, and even what I've experienced is that with the different groups that I've gone out with in doing workshops and community workshops and awareness sessions, what I've seen is that women are often separated so that they can voice their concerns on what are their perceptions around the management tools that are already in place. And like I've mentioned, because they contribute so much, and if their involvement are not being reflected in the data that we eventually interpret, needs to be interpreted with caution. What are the there's a question on what other management measure could be used to protect octopus. Another management measure there's a few countries that's implementing it, is seasonal closure, but that would depend on in these countries that I've looked at, they were quite sure, and it's based on research. They've confirmed the species, and it's been an ongoing. It's a commercial fishery. So in saying that the taxonomy of the animal is already confirmed, and so they've generated, or sorry, they established closure or bans around that particular species based on research that's already been done. And like I mentioned, here in Fiji, or in Fiji and also the 7 countries, sorry, there's a lot of research that needs to be done. Taxonomy is the very first one. We need to identify what we have in order to recommend, say, for example, seasonal closure or size limits for this particular animal, because we can only manage what we know. Right? Apologies, just looking at another question. To my so this particular attendee is asking if there's a survey method to survey octopus out in the community. From what I've seen, a lot of the survey methods that are deployed by our neighbors in Australia and New Zealand obviously is tailor-made to commercial fisheries, but I have not come across a specific community survey method that's tailor-made to survey octopus at the community level. It's usually the conventional point intercept and belt transect survey, where within the belts we do see if there's any in our assessments of invertebrates, we do see if there's octopus within that belt, and obviously that gets extrapolated through calculations and compared to other sites. But I have not come across a specific community method where we can survey octopus in particular. There might be one that's out there, and if one of us maybe have seen one, please feel free to email the team so we could have a discussion around it and maybe see if that's something that we need to develop for our communities in the region. There's another question here from another attendee. What would be the most amazing discovery on octopus after all the research? Thank you. I guess for us, like I've mentioned from the beginning, the drive was we knew there was limited information, and we wanted to move forward in conducting research, for example, around population genetics. How connected are these populations or stocks of octopus around Fiji and also in those other regions? But we were bombarded with those really basic questions that hasn't been answered in the region. And so for me, one of the greatest findings for the review is that and the hopes is that it'll provide a framework, like I've mentioned before, for junior scientists who are coming up, and for scholars, and even for students who probably are looking to progress their studies into masters or PhD studies. The hopes is that the review will provide that platform for them to look at, identify what are the specific questions they need to answer, whether it's cultural, whether it's from a fisheries perspective, whether it's from an ecology, biology perspective, and generate questions around that, and build on that, and just begin to improve the profile of the organism itself. Now, I guess that was a few questions that popped up. I'll now pass it back to Miss Dr. Joachim, who I believe has a few more things probably to share with us before before we close?
Okay, thank you very much, Epeli. Just one question from Antoine. I think we missed out on that. The octopus species in Rotuma the same as in Fiji? I believe that it is the same because this is in the same area and also in the same area of study. But we haven't conducted any research on octopus in Rotuma. So that also can be an interesting thing to go on, which octopus is present in Rotuma from what Epeli has mentioned. Okay, so yeah, so with that, I would like to thank each and every one of you for tuning in, for listening to Epeli's paper. He was the main author of this paper. And thank you, Epeli, for your knowledge and information. And the paper is out there if you want to have a read. And also, this Zoom is also recorded, and you can have a Zoom recording link if you want after this presentation. Okay, thank you very much, and we'll close from there. Have a good day and also have a wonderful weekend.